Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Dennis Stockman, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Lieutenant Commander Philip Bywaters. We warmly welcome the family of Sergeant John Reginald Storer, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During the ceremony, wreaths and floral tributes will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors. Please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops at Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and other operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private John Reginald Storer. John Storer was born in 1895, one of 6 children born to William and Alice Storer of the Sydney suburb of Leichhardt. Known to his family and friends as Jack, he attended Leichhardt State Primary School before completing an engineering apprenticeship and working as a fitter and a turner. Storer spent 4 years in the Citizens Military Forces and had manned part of Sydney's coastal defences at Southhead with the 33rd Engineer Regiment. Storer enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in April 1915, and after 2 months training at Liverpool Military Camp, embarked for Egypt as an original member of the 19th Battalion. Before sailing for the Dardanelles, he was temporarily transferred to the 4th Field Company Engineers, a unit that carried out a range of construction tasks, including digging tunnels, mines and trenches, building dugouts and observation posts, laying track for light railway networks, and repairing roads and bridges. Landing on Gallipoli in September, Storer spent the following months improving the positions at Anzac Cove before Australian and New Zealand forces withdrew in late December. On returning to Egypt, Storer went back to the 19th Battalion and spent the following months training in preparation for deployment to the Western Front. Sailing for France in March 1916, the 19th Battalion was among the first Australian units to see combat, manning positions in the relatively quiet area near Armentières. The battalion then moved south to the Somme, where it fought its first major action in a costly and unsuccessful attack on German positions east of the village of Pozières on the 27th of July 1916. Perhaps due to the heavy casualties incurred throughout the 2nd Division, Storer was transferred to the 2nd Pioneer Battalion. His new unit carried out many of the same tasks as the Field Company Engineers, but they were lighter and more mobile and could be employed as infantry when required. Storer excelled as a pioneer. After Pozières, when the battalion manned forward positions at Fleur, he was promoted to corporal. He participated in the advance that followed up on the German withdrawal to the Hindenburg Line, and after the fighting at Bullecourt in May, was recognised for his untiring rigour in encouraging his men while they were under heavy German artillery and machine gun fire. Promoted to sergeant in August that year, he participated in the fighting near Ypres, when the focus of British operations shifted north into Belgium. In September, a German aircraft dropped a bomb on Storer's platoon as they stopped for a drink at a Comforts Fund stall on the Menin Road. He was evacuated to England suffering from shrapnel wounds to his leg and spent the following weeks undergoing treatment and recovery before returning to Belgium in December 1917. In March 1918, the Germans launched their spring offensive and overran the British defences, breaking the deadlock of trench warfare. The Australians were spared this onslaught, but were sent south from the winter billets in Belgium to blunt the German drive towards the city of Amiens. Near Villers-Bretonneux, Storer displayed conspicuous gallantry and devotion to duty during a German gas bombardment that fell among his platoon. Though badly shaken, he treated his men as best he could and helped minimise the effects of the poisonous gas. On the 8th of August 1918, on the day the Allies launched a counter-offensive against the German army, Storer showed great determination, coolness and devotion to duty while reconnoitring the road, during which he came under intense German machine gun and artillery fire. Later that day, he showed absolute disregard for danger while under fire to keeping his men working to allow Australian artillery to move forward with the highly successful infantry advance. Storer had developed into a capable, reliable and highly experienced soldier who could get the job done in extremely adverse conditions. On the morning of 5th of October 1918, Australian troops of the 6th Brigade, supported by the 2nd Division Pioneers, assaulted and captured the occupied German town of Montbretagne in what was the last Australian action of the First World War. In the midst of the fighting, a German artillery shell landed among Storer's platoon, killing him and 4 others instantly. John Storer was 22 years old. When the action was over, he was buried in a makeshift communal grave on the outskirts of the village, but his body was never formally identified. While it is likely that John Storer now rests under a headstone marked with "Known unto God" in one of the 4 cemeteries at Montbretagne, he is commemorated on the Australian National Memorial at Villers-Bretonneux, along with more than 10,000 Australians killed in France who have no known grave. John's death had a tremendous impact on the Storer family. John's brother, Lieutenant William Storer, had been killed near Gurdencourt in February 1917, and now John had died in the last Australian action of the war. In 1919, John Storer was posthumously awarded the Military Medal and Bar for his actions at Villers-Bretonneux and Amiens. A small epitaph penned by his family had early appeared in the newspaper, "An Anzac at Rest." His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Sergeant John Storer, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they'll be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and good evening.